we go for launch.
5.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
4.
My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
This whole thing is insane.
3.
Quiet, please. I am analyzing.
Where's the kaboom?
2.
There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
1.
The sun set in the early eve. No light could pierce those mammoth trees, dark and dense for miles wide. You could wander lost forever inside. Oh, tales of horror that forest weaved, of monsters and ghosts behind each tree. Werewolves hollowing at the fullest moon, those screeches of witches and baleful loons. We'd hike all day and camp all night, when those campfire stories would fill us with fright. Tales of terror, too grim to conceive, but anything goes on All Hallows Eve. We knew we wouldn't get much sleep. Instead, we'd listen to footsteps creep. We'd watch the shadows in the firelight, staying quiet and safe out of sight. Blood splatters upon the walls of our tent. We'd cling and we'd cry, repent and lament. We'd tell ourselves it was all make-believe, and that anything goes on All Hallows Eve.
Greetings, my fellow galactic travelers, and welcome back to Planet 8. This is your mission commander Larry speaking to you from our hidden base. Chief Engineer Bob is here by my side as always in the command center, and circling Planet 8 in our orbital spy satellite is Reconnaissance Officer Karen. And we are back. Planet 8 is in the spooky season. We're going to talk today about our favorite haunted house movies. So straight away, we're going to kick it over to Bob. Bob, start us off. What do you got for us, buddy?
Well, yeah, I spent the last week and a half watching ghosts and haunted houses and spirits. And, I got to say, if you're in a ghost movie or you're in a haunted house, take it from me. Don't go in the attic, go in the basement, and don't open any damn closets. That's where you get in trouble.
Good advice.
That's true. So, yes, ghost movies. Perfect subject for Halloween. And for those on YouTube, I have my Halloween shirt on. And yeah, it was a cool journey. It was like kind of trying to watch some ghost films that I hadn't seen before, or ones that I particularly wanted to present. Because I could have gone like with, the Ghost of Mr. Chicken or something like that. But we kind of talked about that in our horror comedy episode last time around. So, yeah, actually the first movie I went back to was 1940s. It was called Ghost Ship.
Mm.
And when I watched it, there were no ghosts in the entire movie. That was kind of a bonus for me. It was a good movie, Val Newton, but it was basically about murders on a ship and who done it and all that. But they called it Ghost Ship and they roped me in with the title. So
bait and switch.
Yeah.
So I went with another older film. I went with 1963's The Haunting.
Oh, good one.
Yeah.
And I got a couple little notes here. I may have to put on my my ghost glasses in order to read it. But yeah, this was produced and directed by Robert Wise, who the decade before did The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh, yes.
And then the decade after he did
Star Trek, the motion picture.
Dun, 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 dun.
Ta-da!
So it was based on a novel called Haunting of Hill House, and it has been remade a couple times under that title.
Mhm.
The novel was by Shirley Jackson, and it was written in 1959. The movie came out in 1963. Stars Julie Harris, Claire Bloom, Richard Johnson, no relation, and Russ Tamblyn. I'll tell you the story at the end of my spiel here, but yeah, it was funny because Russ Tamblyn, he was coming off of West Side Story, and he read The Haunting, and he didn't want to do it because he thought his character was too much of an asshole. But he was under contract with MGM, and they forced him to do it,
Oh, wow.
and it ended up being one of his favorite roles.
Mm.
And basically, it's the story of four people that go into this haunted house to prove or disprove whether it's haunted or not, whether there are ghosts in the house. And the Russ Tamblyn character, he's the one who's inheriting the house. So, of course, he wants it disproven because otherwise it brings the real estate value down. And then the other actor in there, Richard Johnson, he plays someone who definitely, paranormal psychologist and totally believes in everything and wants to prove it to be correct. And then the other two actors, one of the actresses is basically, the character is very much a home person. She had been taking care of her grandmother for years and never really left the house, doesn't really have friends. So this was like a whole adventure to her. And then the other is a psychic who could read minds. And she definitely uses that to not only play with the one character, Nell, but also the other characters in the movie. But it's very good. It's very creepy. Not a lot of like jump scares, but it's definitely worth checking out. Especially with Robert Wise, it's definitely the direction on this film is really good. In fact, I read that when they designed the interior of the Hell House, they made it so that there were no dark corners it was all supposed to be totally lit just to feel claustrophobic because they're trapped in this house. And the house ends up taking on, even though there's ghosts in the house that encounter them, the house itself takes on a whole personality and ends up taking over Nell, the one character, and she ends up staying in the house. She's gonna stay and live there. But very cool movie. I'm sure you guys have probably seen it, maybe.
My mom always loved to watch scary movies, so I saw a lot of these when I was really young. And this one I remember was really especially disturbing to me as, a young, like 7-ish-year-old kid. And two things really stood out to me, and I still remember those above everything else. I think there's a scene where like a door it's sort of like breathing, like it's moving in and out. And that was disturbing. And then the scene that was really scary was when the two women are in the bedroom together and they're frightened and they say, "Oh, hold my hand." And they're supposed to be holding hands, but then it turns out that they weren't holding hands, and whoever was holding the one's hand, it was a ghost that was holding her hand. So that was really scary.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was gonna say a lot of your imagination is used in this film, and
Oh, definitely.
the music always just adds that extra level to the frights and just a whole overall ambiance of the haunting. So
The music was somewhat sort of a electronic score.
yeah,
Wasn't it actually?
not theremin, but yeah, you're right.
It wasn't quite to the extent of like Forbidden Planet,
Right.
but yeah, it was a cool
It was cool,
product.
still holds up today. That's the great thing about it.
And then Russ Tamlin, like I say, he was our guest at the first Godzilla Fest because we were showing War of the Gargantuas. And after War of the Gargantuas, he got up on stage. First time he had actually seen the movie. That was actually pretty good. He was all in a great mood and got up on stage. I asked him like one question and he went on for like an hour. But somebody in the audience asked him about The Haunting, and yeah, he definitely loved that movie and loved that role. So
Nice. All right, moving right along. Let's kick it over to the satellite. Walker, what do you got for us?
Well, I have a movie that is similarly titled, but it was an entirely different film. And this one is The Legend of Hell House, which comes from a story by Richard Matheson, who, of course, we all know. Matheson wrote a lot of different, I think, Twilight Zones, and well known for, his contribution to horror.
trilogy too.
Yeah, a lot of short stories too,
And so this one came out in 1973. Notable to me anyway, because it starred Roddy McDowall, our friend from Planet of the Apes. Very similar kind of story where, again, 4 people in a haunted house trying to, disprove that it's essentially that it's haunted. And I gotta say, it's funny because I remember seeing this with my mom when I was a kid and thinking it was scary. And I watched it again and I kind of underwhelmed by it. Hey, I hate to say that. And I don't know, and this may be a little bit of a recurring thing. And it may be because of the way movies are put together today. And now I'm used to sort of a more fast-paced in films, but I kind of sat there feeling like it was, very slow going and just not scary. Like there was a scene in this movie where there's a cat and we're to assume that the cat is sort of possessed and the cat attacks this woman. And I hate to say it made me laugh. I just didn't think it was that threatening. And I worked for a veterinarian and I had cats attack me. And that was pretty damn scary, but it didn't affect me that way.
What were they possessed?
They don't even need to be possessed. They're already
Most
demon
cats.
spawn.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I had mixed feelings about it. There were a few scenes that I thought were kind of cool, but overall, I hate to be a downer. It didn't really do it for me. And I know there may be other opinions here about the film. Mr. Bob, you might have something.
I really liked the movie, and I saw it in the theater when it came out. And I don't know. Back then, I gotta admit, I had a big crush on Pamela Franklin. So
It's a good crush to have.
that helped the movie.
Yeah, she was the psychic, one of the 2 psychics in the film.
And then Roddy McDowall, of course, always a favorite.
Mhm.
In fact, there are some lines in this movie. I was watching it last week, and there are a couple lines he has in the movie that when he says them, I'm like, Caesar. It's like, Cornelius, which, it's like, it definitely brought me back to the Planet of the Apes films. But no, I definitely enjoyed it. Supposedly, Richard Matheson had written it as a novel called Hell House.
Yeah.
And the novel has much more sex and sadism in it between the Pamela Franklin character and Belasco.
Yeah, the spirit.
And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll order the book on Amazon and see what it's like. But yeah, I know one thing I was reading was that the ghost Belasco, who you don't really see much in the movie, It's played by an uncredited Michael Goff.
Hmm.
And he recorded like 2 lines and then he appears as a corpse in a chair.
Right.
But that's the extent of his role, but he didn't get credit for it. So he didn't have to cop to it.
Well, I'll say I haven't seen it for a while. And when I did see it, not at theaters, but on Creature Feature, I found this skull at Michael's and ordered some candles on Amazon, and I now have my Creature Feature skull back. Anyway, back in the day, Roddy McDowall did a lot of work, not just, Planet of the Apes. And so I'd never really seen him at that point, at that age, in something frightful. And, as a, 8-year-old kid, this really scared the bejesus out of me. Just the sounds and the angles that they'd film the fright on the other actors' faces. And it is a slow burn. And, Jasmine and I will watch some films and she'll make comments. She's more of like a wah, in your face, boom, boom, boom. I'm okay with the slow burn now and again. Sometimes I do fall asleep during a slow burn, but that's the age. That's not the film.
Just remember the golden rule. Don't start any movies after 9 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Roddy McDowall, it reminds me, oh God, not Twilight Zone, but not Outer
Night
Limits.
Gallery.
Night Gallery, thank you.
I'll say
They had
Batman.
all these actors playing, cult leaders and Satanists, and it was just really bizarre. I remember a Bill Bixby episode where he was like fighting these cult people. Anyway, so seeing Roddy McDowall in that role kind of added to the fright and the angst.
When Bill Bixby was fighting him, did he use magic, or did he Hulk out?
He used that would have been a hell of an episode. He used his good heart and his will, and I won't spoil it for you, but things did not turn out too well for Mr. Bixby.
So that was sort of kind of the courtship of Eddie's father version of Bill Bixby then.
Yeah.
Or My Favorite Martian.
Oh, we're taking some deep dives here into
The Thanksgiving episode this year will be thankful for Bill Bixby.
Well, my friends, I'm going to have to refer to my notes, which beginning of this episode, my tech laptop monitor, everything just was not cooperating. Don't update your tech before a show, kids. That's all I got to tell you. And from now on, it's all going to be written down. But your mission commander was able to pull up some of his notes. I was fortunate enough, or maybe unfortunate. I don't know if you've seen this or not. It's, I believe, on Amazon. It could be on Shudder, but I think it was Amazon. The Stone Tape, 1972. This is in English. It was a play, and then they switched it over and adapted it to a television program on BBC back in 1972. And let me see. It was sold as like a Christmas ghost story. I didn't see the Christmas element to the story. Maybe they released it in December. But what tagged me is it was science fiction and horror. And so the idea was that hauntings are actually, there was this Victorian home and there was a certain room that wasn't renovated and it still had the cobblestones from, back in the day. And they were able to bring in these devices to record, the research facility. And the team investigates the phenomenon, trying to determine if the stones of the buildings are acting as a recording medium. So all the negative energy, these ghosts, the hauntings, are actually recorded in the stones. And then rather than unleashing, freeing the spirits or whatever, they just screw everything up, and this dark malevolent force is unleashed, and the medium that they bring in, unfortunately, suffers issues with this dark malevolent force. I was pleasantly surprised, and Walker, you're going to appreciate this, that Nigel Neal was best known as the writer of Quatermass.
Oh, yeah.
And
I was going to say this sounded very much like a Quatermass.
so, in juxtaposition of science and superstition, was a frequent theme in his work.
Mhm.
And it was a fun watch. It was critically acclaimed at the time, back in the early 70s when they broadcast it. Was a play, like I said at first. It's a bit of a slow burn in the beginning, but once things pick up, this is one of those. It almost reminded me of like a Doctor Who episode, like the Tom Baker, the early, or maybe John Pertwee, where they'd superimpose, if there was a ghost or a spirit, it kind of looked out of place because the technology was lacking at the time. So it was a real quick cut, but the sound and the screams and the, type effects, kind of like that cat's paw. We've talked about this a number of times,
Yeah.
but the whole which Captain Kirk, it's like a chalkboard, fingernails on a chalkboard. The sounds that they used in this movie, and actually, where was it? Since its broadcast, the hypothesis of residual haunting, that ghosts are recordings of past events made by the natural environment, has come to be known as the stone tape theory. And I'll tell you the truth, I didn't take a deep dive into that theory, but go figure. Anyway, if you get a chance to watch it this spooky season, I recommend it. Not
So
highly
at the end,
recommend
did anybody like collect all the stones and put them like in a glove?
it. These were like big cobblestones, and it's this one room that they left unchanged in this Victorian home. And it's interesting. It's really well written, actually, I think. And it's interesting how they continue, even though there's danger, that for the sake of science and perfecting this technology, they continue to go where they shouldn't go. And it's to the point where you're like, don't do it. Don't open the door or window or whatever. And they do, and you're kind of like, well. So it was cool. Like I say, science fiction and haunting. How could you go wrong?
Definitely.
So back to Bob.
Well, in keeping with the BBC motif,
Yes, sir.
notes here and my ghost glasses. I watched, now this, when we do horror, we do ghosts, whatever, I always have to consult my horror daughter, Mel, and she suggested watching Ghost Watch
Oh, I heard of
on
that.
Shudder. And it was a 1992 BBC One mockumentary.
Mm.
And they aired it only once until you got Shudder, only once on Halloween night. And they basically used Michael Parkinson, who, if you've ever watched British documentaries, he was a big part of hosting a lot of those. And they used a lot of the BBC crew so that it actually looked like an actual newscast going on at that time. And they go to this haunted house, and it's haunted by a ghost that they call Mr. Pipes.
Oh.
Because the two little girls and their mother live in this house, and the two little girls kept hearing noises in their room. And so the mother would just say, "Oh, it's just the pipes." So they would refer to this ghost as Mr. Pipes. And so the BBC crew goes in to investigate, and it starts kind of just little, bumps and knocks and things like that. And then as the documentary goes on, things start to increase. And they cut back and forth between the crew and the studio where they're hosting the show. And Michael Parkinson, and they're taking calls, supposedly live. And people would call and say, "Oh, on that one clip you showed, I saw a body in the background." And they're like, "Okay, well, let's go back to that clip." And they look and, "Oh, look, it looks like a body," you know. So it's all kind of interactive. And supposedly when this thing was airing, it was almost like War of the Worlds back in because a lot of people thought this was actually happening. So they didn't do anything like over the top at the beginning. You know, it was all just kind of like one of those paranormal shows you watch.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, supposedly elicited reports said millions of calls, but it was probably, you know, hundreds of calls. But it was definitely effective. And towards the end, the house, like the crew starts, they see something, they start screaming, boom, the video goes out. They cut back to the studio. They're trying to get back in touch with them. They finally see the video going, and it's like the family and the BBC crew all just kind of sitting around, and yeah, everything's peaceful and calm. And then they figure out that's not live. That was taped. So where are they? You know, they're still missing. There's still something going on. And then, of course, and then you get like a wind that comes through the studio, and all of a sudden, like lights go out and explode, and everything happens, and the crew starts running, and you know, Michael Parkinson's like, you know, something's happening in the studio, and it cuts, and that's like the end. And but it's for what it was pretty effective, and you know, obviously not a huge budget. It was just a BBC show. It was actually part of a series called let's see, what is it? Series was called Screen One. So very effective. If you get a chance to watch it, definitely take a look. I watched it last night. I actually broke my rule and started it after 9 o'clock, and I started getting kind of tired, but then it kind of drug me in a good way. It kept me awake and kept me watching. So I'm glad I finished it up instead of just turning it off and falling asleep. But very good. One of the better ones that I watched, actually.
Cool.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I wanted to see that, and now that you brought it up again, I'm gonna have to put that on the list here and check it out.
It is on Shudder, so you can definitely check it out.
Well, I don't have Shudder, but maybe I'll have to look into that, or maybe I can get a trial run or something.
I'm to invest in Shudder.
Yeah,
It is,
invested in
yeah,
way too many
handy to
things.
have. We have Shudder as well.
You can watch Creep Show on there too.
The series. We had some friends over last night, Jenny and Chad, and we were watching some horror movies, and I was telling him, Jasmine's like, "Can we watch In and Out 2 just to, you know, because all we watch are scary movies." I'm like, "What's the month of October?" She says, "Yeah, but we watch this all year long." I'm like, "That's true." So,
Yeah, but in October you ramp it up.
yeah. So, anywho, let's kick it up to the satellite. Walker, what you got for us?
I've got a good one.
A good one. Okay.
So you say.
I'm talking about a film where a small town has to deal with a mysterious fog.
That is a good film.
The name of the film, The Fog, by the immortal John Carpenter.
Now, is this the original or the remake?
I don't even recognize the remake. That was ridiculous.
The remake does not exist.
Like, why? Why did they even bother, right?
Yeah.
But this film is so good. I mean, it's just, and it's a bit of a slow burn at points too, but it keeps your attention.
There are key moments where they explain things to come, right? So it works well.
Right. And it's got really good characters you're interested in. And then just the story is so cool because it's a story of revenge, and you kind of feel like, oh, these spirits are justified in their feelings of revenge,
Right.
of wanting to come back and get their revenge. It's a proper ghost story about these pirates who were on a ship, and they had cut a deal. They had leprosy, and they'd cut a deal with the town elders 100 years before to settle in a particular spot. And then they were tricked and guided into the town, but to a rocky place where their ship crashed, and they were, killed, and their fortunes were taken. And so 100 years later, they're coming back to claim their revenge. The interesting thing about this is that John Carpenter, so he co-wrote this with Deborah Hill, who I think was his wife at the time. And he claimed like two different sources of inspiration. One was that they had been in England and at Stonehenge, and the fog was coming in, and he was like, oh, what if there were spirits in the fog and they were going to get us? It was like, oh, that's interesting. But then he claimed that he sort of based it on true events. And the reason I found this interesting was he claimed that this happened in Goleta, California. So Goleta, I actually lived in Goleta for a while when I was going to school in Santa Barbara. And he claimed that, oh yeah, in the 1700s, they tricked a ship into coming in and crashed it with a phony fire and blah, blah, blah. So I found that interesting. That was like, I lived there for a few years. I never heard anything about this, but anyway, who knows? Who knows what could have happened, right? But it's just such a great atmospheric film. The fog effects are really neat. When I was watching it, I thought, okay, some of this might have been filmed like backwards, like run backwards. A lot of it was maybe in water tanks and then superimposed over things, but the fog effects are really cool. Mm-hmm. And then there's the story about how they had to go back and refilm things because it wasn't gory enough for audiences. And so they brought in, I think, Rob Bottin to make like the worm face guy and stuff. But it's such a great film. Maybe it's not in a haunted house setting, but it's definitely spirits getting their revenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you guys think about it?
I love it. And I love Adrienne Barbeau, who was at the San Jose Toy Show a couple of years ago, and she still looks beautiful. I love the sultry voice that she uses as the radio broadcaster, and I also like that as they begin to realize what's happening, she puts out there, avoid the fog. Don't go into the fog.
She sort of can see everything, and she's trying to tell people, don't go this way, go up the other road. And
right.
All
she's
that.
in the lighthouse, right?
Right.
That's where so
that's gotta be the coolest radio job you can.
I know.
Up in a lighthouse overlooking everything.
And here's the thing, it's like, okay, don't go out in the fog. And this is what, like, it still holds up today for me. Fog can go under your door, can go through an open window. A lot of times the fog comes to you, to forget avoiding the fog. So it just it worked really well. And the whole ghost story, the way that the movie starts, spoiler alert, with
John Houseman.
John Houseman, yes.
Yeah.
Very distinct cadence and I can't say enough about this film. If you have not seen it, make sure to watch it. And if you have seen it, watch it again. You'll enjoy it.
I did, in fact, see it in the theater when it came out.
Of course.
Yeah, no, it had a great big impact on me. I love the movie. I mean, it's probably one of my favorite John Carpenter films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big Trouble in Little China. But it was an excellent film.
Yeah. It's funny. I think people, and we did a John Carpenter episode. Hint, if you haven't seen it, go back and search for it because it's a good one. But I do think you're right, Bob. I think people you know, people think of John Carpenter, they think of The Thing, they think of Halloween, but um, I put this right up there. It's a really strong movie.
And
Absolutely.
it's nice that it's a standalone.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have sequels, prequels, whatever. It's the fog. There it
That's
is.
a great point, Bob. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all in one story.
Yeah, self-contained. And the ending is great because you think, oh, it's all over. They've gone back. They're satisfied, but not quite.
One more.
Yeah.
Pirates are never satisfied. Remember?
Arr. All right, my friends. The Fog was actually on my list, so I'm going to kind of jump one of the movies that I took off the list to make room for The Fog, and that's
Uh-huh.
the Amityville Horror.
Oh my.
This is the original. The windows on that house scared the crap out of me. Just like the music from The Exorcist. There's something that just locks into your gray matter. And this was Margot Kidder and oh shoot, I can't think of the actor's name.
I'm gonna guess
Un momento, por favor. Oh, go ahead, Walker.
Was it
James Brolin. James Brolin,
Because
yes.
I actually
And-
haven't seen this.
Oh, you have not?
I like possession movies and stuff. I've seen The Exorcist, but like possession films really
Yeah.
me, so I kind of avoid them.
Well, this is based on the Warrens, who would investigate hauntings and possessions and
Mhm.
perform exorcisms and things of that nature. And so very loosely based on the research that they did on this home. And it was so popular, people would always, they since tore the house down or renovated it drastically so that it doesn't have that iconic look.
Right.
And so it's kind of a combination of like a haunting and like a possession. Was it an evil spirit? Was it a ghost? Was it I won't get too much into it because there are some gory parts to it, but it's not overly gory, Walker. I mean, I would hold it up with like, The Fog. There were some gory parts to The Fog. But this is more contemporary, and so that's more disturbing. And it's a husband and a wife and their children, so that adds a layer of just fright to it. But if you are like Walker and have not seen it, I highly recommend it. Bob probably saw it when it came out in the movie theater.
I did, and I think that was probably the last time I saw it.
Wow.
I just have just little vague recollections of it.
Yeah. It's a fun film. It's gonna
Is it
scare
fun?
you. Well,
Fun
fun,
and
disturbing kind of way. In a ghostly possession kind of. It's just, it's those iconic films, like I said, Exorcist, Jaws, Amityville Horror. There was a given part in the 70s where these films were coming out, and they were different forms of horror. So anyway, if you haven't seen it, I won't dwell on it too much. I won't give anything away. I recommend it.
Yeah,
And
any of
now-
these films you haven't seen, Halloween's coming up, so it's a good time
Yes.
Yeah.
to check
Yes.
these
And
out.
this is one of those ones that's based on what people perceive to be a true story. There was a husband who killed his family in that house before James Brolin and Margot Kidder moved into the house. And God, it's just, the flies. There's a scene with the flies. How can flies be scary?
Help me.
Figure it out. So anyway, I enjoyed it, and I hope you do too. So let's kick it over to Bob that way.
Yeah. Kind of jumping around my list a little bit.
Yeah.
There was a Japanese film called Ju-on.
Good one.
It translates as The Grudge.
Yes.
And it was by Takashi Shimizu. He wrote and directed it. And it really, with that and The Ring and a couple others, the Japanese have creepy down to a science. It's
Yeah.
like the creep factor in this film is just like off the scale. And a lot of that is attributed, and I've got my notes here, my ghost glasses back on.
Your spectral specs.
A lot of that is attributed to Takako Fuji, who played Kayako, the main ghost mom in this house. And just the way that her eyes get real wide and she kind of cocks her head and then she'll crawl down the stairs and do all these creepy moves. And it's like, oh my God. In fact, there's one scene where the actress is in bed and she sees the sheets in front of her kind of rise and she like looks underneath the sheets and there's Kayako under the sheets staring at her.
Oh God.
It's a quick shot, boom. So I'd seen Juan many times. And I'll tell you a funny story in a bit. But so I decided this time around I would watch The Grudge, the US version that was done it's a couple years after Juan, and starring Buffy herself, Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Huh.
But they brought Takashi Shimizu back to direct it, and they got the original actors. So you had Takako Fuji, you had Yuya Ozaki, who basically plays Toshio, or as he says it, Toshio, the little boy, and then Takashi Matsuyama, who played the murderous father who killed them in this house. But the whole idea behind The Grudge is basically, in a lot of the movies, you go into this haunted house and you discover that it's haunted and there's things going on. So what do? Get the hell out.
Yeah.
Leave it behind. I'm done with that. Well, in The Grudge, a haunting follows you. So you actually bring it home with you. And there's scenes, like I say, like in bed with the sheet. There's another one where one of the characters wakes up in bed and Toshio's like sitting at the foot of the bed. And Kayako like looks from behind, kind of looks over and down on her, which is like this really creepy scene. But I got to say, The Grudge was basically produced by Sam Raimi. So it has a little different feel from Ju-on. And whereas Ju-on is very creepy, very unsettling, very spooky, The Grudge is more into, it has some of those creepy scenes, but it's more into the jump scares. And there were a couple times, because I hadn't seen it in a while, so there was a couple times I jumped. And there's a great scene in both movies where the main actress, in this case, Sarah Michelle Gellar, is taking a shower, washing her hair. And as she's washing her hair and she puts her hands behind her head, there's like another hand with the fingers coming up through the hair. She feels the other hand. Oh my God, turns around, nothing there. So definitely cool. Watch both. I'd say watch both movies because I say Ju-on, very creepy, spooky. The Grudge, more creepy, but jump scares. And
Bob, why did they decide to use the original Japanese actors in the US version as well?
well, the director, Takashi Shimizu, Sam Raimi loved the original. So he brought the director on. And so they ended up shooting it in Japan, used the same actors. Because really, if you watch the character Kayako, no one could do that like her. I mean, no one's that creepy. Although one of the movies I watched, Crimson Peak, Doug Jones plays the ghost. And there's a scene where he's crawling along the hallway. And he must have seen Ju-on because he has sort of the same type of moves. I think he's probably the only person who could be as creepy as the ghost Kayako. But
He has a unique physicality.
and they also use the same house. They shot in the same house.
It's so weird. It's like they remade it, but it's like it almost sounds like they remade it so similarly.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I
why?
mean, they had the similar elements, but then you had all the white actors, all the American actors that kind of played characters out of their element.
Hmm.
They're in Japan. Some of them don't speak Japanese. One of them, this one woman claims that, I went for a walk, I got lost. No one could speak English. No one could help me. She wanted to go home and all this. But one thing both movies do very well is intercutting stories. So people that go to this house and basically contract this grudge and take it with them. There's maybe 3 or 4 stories of things that happened. And of course, the original story of how the house became haunted. And it's all told non-linearly. So kind of cuts back and forth. You're like, oh, wait, this is now. No, this is then. No, this is. But it's very, very cool the way it was. And maybe Shimizu's the only one who could actually pull that off
Yeah.
with
I'll
all
have
the
to check it out.
intercutting stories and all that. But definitely watch both. They're both worth a good watch.
Yeah, I agree. Jasmine likes the jump scares, and so the Raimi version was the one for her. But
Oh yeah, I told you that little story too, because my daughter Mel, she and I used to watch that all the time, and she loved it. And there's this one noise that the mother makes, sort of like a.
yeah, yeah.
We were in a bookstore one time, and we're in this one aisle, and from the aisle next to us, we hear, and she looks at me like, "What?" And I'm like, "Huh?" And we kind of like look around, and it was actually this handicapped kid in a wheelchair that was making that noise. But it was like suddenly Kayako's in the bookstore. And then I mentioned The Ring. And this is my favorite trivia of all time. And I'll throw this out. I'm not going to go totally into The Ring, but if you've seen The Ring, there's the main investigator that's looking into everything. He is played by Ken Utsui. Ken Utsui is better known to a lot of old people like us as Starman, Evil Brain from Outer Space, Invaders from Space, all the 4 Starman movies from way back. That's Ken Utsui, who eventually became the investigator in The Ring.
Fun fact.
He doesn't wear the globe meter though, but
That's cool. All right. Walker.
Okay. Well, my next film is a movie that I'm sure we've all seen and most people have seen. This is 1982's Poltergeist, supposedly directed by Tobe Hooper, but most people think that Steven Spielberg had a big hand in it. Watching this again, it's interesting because, when you watch all these other films, there's a very different mood and atmosphere to most haunted house / ghost films. This film, watching Poltergeist, I really sat there, and my big takeaway, I think, was that this felt like they took a blockbuster movie and tried to wrap it up with a haunted house theme. They built a big sort of actiony, popcorn movie, and then, plugged all the kind of scares into it. It didn't at all have the same sort of feel as these other films. To me, it really felt more like, oh, this is just another big popcorn movie with some jump scares. And I didn't get that same feeling of like, there's a spirit realm or there's another realm, and sometimes things are evil and sometimes they're not. And it just it didn't have that overall atmosphere that maybe you look for in a haunted house kind of movie. It's like this was made to be a summer blockbuster. Hey, the kids can go see it. And now it's creepy and funny and scary.
Bring the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does have some scary stuff in it, but it's not, I never felt like any of it was particularly disturbing or, like you were saying, creepy, Bob, like, oh, there's the tree outside the window and the kid's scared of it. Or even when Joe Beth Williams slips in the pool and there's all the skeletons in the pool, and it's like, yeah, it's scary. You might see the same thing in an Indiana Jones. I think we did see the same thing in an Indiana Jones movie. I don't know. It's not I'm not saying it's a bad movie or anything. It's an entertaining film, certainly, but I almost feel weird putting it into this category of like haunted house movies, because it is such a blockbustery kind of movie. The whole house at the end is like spinning around, giant black hole sucking it in, it's just it got a whole different feel to it. So while I would say that, yes, it's a haunted house movie, I would more put it in that category of blockbuster movie than anything else. That was just my feeling.
Haunted house movie.
What's that?
It's a blockbuster haunted house movie.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. If somebody said to me, "Oh, I really want to watch a good haunted house movie," I don't think Poltergeist would be my first suggestion to them.
I like Poltergeist. I think it's charming.
Yeah,
I
sure.
understand what you're saying, but for me, whenever children are in jeopardy, it adds a level of, don't mess with the kids, and they do. And so there's no sacred cows, there's no rules. Another fun part of the way that the film starts is her talking to the TV, and they play, which they don't play anymore because everything's 24 hours,
Right.
7 days a week, was the, national anthem. Dun, 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 dun.
Mhm.
And we end our broadcast day,
Right.
you
Yes.
yeah.
Five.
And
Who are
she's just,
you?
yeah. I mean, it was creepy. And, is she imagining? Because, kids have imaginary friends. I did. Not now, Bobo. I'll mention you later. That still are with me today. Haha, just kidding. The brother getting sucked out by this tree, is he imagining it? Is it really happening? Then when the parents see that it's happening, the toys are spinning around in the room. The clown. Who doesn't love
Well,
a possessed clown?
I'm terrified of clowns, so I didn't
That was
enjoy that.
creepy.
It's
Almost as
it's
Mm-hmm.
creepy as
very
mine.
actiony, it's just like it's so over the top and everything.
It gets to that. It builds up to that. Yes, it
Yeah,
does. But the way it started, I thought was a great start. Bringing in the medium, who's about
yeah,
to die, saying, "Well, these spirits get confused," and the accent, but this malevolent spirit doesn't want to let go of Carol Ann. And then there's this whole stigma around the film where actors started dying.
oh
And
yeah, that came, yeah.
yeah, is there a curse? There's a series called Cursed Films. This is one of the cursed films. Wizard of Oz is also. I didn't make the series. Check it out for yourself. Make your own determination. But and I guess what do you think, Bob? Poltergeist?
Poltergeist was cool. It was one of the last, I think, ghost films with practical effects.
Good point.
Yeah.
Now they can take CG and make ghosts look like however they want to make them look, but or enhance them with CG. But yeah, no, it was definitely. And you were talking about Spielberg maybe having a hand in directing. It definitely had. Back then, his favorite thing to do would be like the intense backlighting,
Yeah.
silhouette of something in the foreground. Did that a lot in Close Encounters and again in Poltergeist. The medium, she was kind of creepy.
She was.
She was definitely a medium.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I enjoyed it. Of course, I saw it in the theater when it came out.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
she makes a great point.
I haven't seen it recently though, so
Uh,
I'll have to.
I mean,
I
I'm not
was
saying
going to watch it, but then I kind of ran out of time. But
I'm not saying it's not a good movie. I think it's enjoyable.
wouldn't classify it as.
But yeah, I don't know how much I can classify it as like a haunted house film. It just feels more like a action or blockbuster film to
Yeah,
me.
yeah, and I get that feel to it. And the other thing I liked is that you built this, property, all these homes on a burial ground, Indian burial ground. It just like,
you idiot.
Right. You moved the headstones, but you didn't move the bodies. Yeah, no, there was definitely some cool stuff in there. Zelda Rubinstein was the psychic. And
Yes,
yeah,
there
you're
you
kind
go.
of sitting there going like, wait, is she really good or is she doing leading them in the wrong direction? Go into the light. And it's like you said, no, don't go in the light. And yeah, it was the first movie anyway. It was good. They made some sequels after that, which I think were not so good.
Right. There was a Twilight Zone episode where a child gets lost into this
Other dimension.
void. Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that too. It's like tapping on the wall.
Oh, I think they definitely took some what do you call it? Inspiration from that Twilight Zone where, they were making marks on the wall and doing calculations and then they pulled the kid out of the wall.
Definitely. The creep
Yeah.
factor of hearing that echoey voice of a child. I'm lost, Mommy, help me.
I can't find you, Mommy.
Well, your mission commander's bringing up the rear here, and this will be the last film that we'll discuss, other than maybe some honorable mentions. So I did watch the new Poltergeist produced by Sam Raimi back in 2015. Sam Rockwell starred in it.
Didn't even know that existed.
Check it out. It's not bad, but the first one was a lot better. I'll put it to you that way. I have an honorable mention. I won't mention it now, but The Changeling with George C. Scott.
Oh, I watched that as well.
Man, it still holds up today. Ghosts, Nazis, lies, politics, intrigue. They open up the film with spoiler alert. What's that?
Sounds like the election coming up.
Were there? Oh, jeez. I tip my hat to you, sir.
Were there
Nazis in The Changeling?
There was the grandson at the end, right? Wasn't his ancestor a Nazi and they had stolen coins and he was a politician?
He was a politician. Maybe I missed a part with the Nazi part.
There was, yeah, I double check my notes, but we'll have the fans check. Were there Nazis involved or not involved? It opens the film. He loses his family within the first 10 minutes of the movie, and you're
that was pretty awful.
That was gruesome. I mean, it wasn't visually gruesome, but just watching what happens to them, and he's depressed, obviously. He's a composer, and he's just trying to figure out what's what, and these strange things start happening in this home, echoes and sounds and whatnot. And it's a great film. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Bob, did you see it in theaters?
I haven't seen it at all, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm glad I did.
Those Nazis, I'm in. I got to go check it out.
Okay.
I still have time to watch a few more horror films.
I will say, I heard from a few people that they liked it, so I watched it because I hadn't seen it before either.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty good movie. It's a slow burn, but it's pretty interesting, and it's sort of like a murder mystery too.
It is.
So it's George C. Scott trying to figure out what's going on, and he's in that house and stuff is happening. And then he realizes there's something that happened in the house and he's trying to figure it out. And Trish Vanderveer, who was actually, I think, his wife at the time, is helping him. And yeah, it's an interesting film. And what actually the story is turns out to be pretty interesting too. Pretty horrible story behind the house. So yeah, good pick, Larry.
What do I have to do tonight? Not much, I don't think. So maybe I'll watch The Change.
I saw it on, it was on Amazon for like $3 or something like that.
I actually had to pay for a couple movies this go around.
I
Yeah,
usually
we did
wind up
too.
doing that too.
So
But
we got,
that's so.
I mean, as far as honorable mentions for me would be Insidious. Have you seen that?
Insidious.
That's too new for me, Bob. I don't understand these new movies.
Hey, come on, get with the time. Yeah, no, it's basically what they think is a haunted house. This family moves into a house, they think it's haunted. So the mother's like, get me out of here. We got to move. This is haunted. I can't take it anymore. So they move to another house and they have the same things going on. It turns out the house is not haunted. One of their sons is haunted and he's in a coma and he's been manifesting all these spirits and things. And it's very much like that Twilight Zone or whatever, where at the end, the father has to, it turns out the father, he inherited these powers from the father and he's got to go into this other realm and rescue his son, bring him back out. But it's very, very cool movie. And the other one that I watched was Crimson Peak, which is new. Guillermo del Toro, and he did this after Pacific Rim. And basically stars Tom Hiddleston, better known as Loki to all of you. And it's a great sort of a twist where it's back in sort of, it has a gothic feel, almost like a Hammer feel to it. And he's trying to get an investment for this device that he invented that will harvest clay out of the ground in order to make bricks and things. And the clay is referred to as a Crimson Peak. But there's an actress in the film, or character in the film, where ever since she was a kid, this ghost would keep appearing to her and warning her about the Crimson Peak. And so she finds out that what she was really warning her about was Tom Hiddleston's character, because they get married and he's like got a relationship with his sister.
Oh, geez.
And what they do is he seduces these women, he gets them to marry him, and then he gets them, his sister basically slowly poisons them, and he gets them to sign over, whatever inheritance or mansions or whatever they have to him.
Oh my.
Yeah. And, from there, the fun ensues. But again, Guillermo del Toro, and as I mentioned earlier, even though the ghost is the mother of Tom Hiddleston and his sister, it's played by Doug Jones.
Oh.
In ghostly drag.
Ghostly drag.
So yeah, just the movements of the ghost and all that. Very cool. It's definitely a movie I would recommend.
Nice. Waki, you have an honorable mention for us?
I didn't really get around to more films, so no. You guys can.
No problem. I didn't
How
watch
about
this.
The Ghost from Drag Strip Hollow?
I didn't get to watch this. It'll be watched before Halloween, but I love Don Knotts and The Ghost and Mr. Chicken.
That's my perennial Halloween film.
Yeah. Again, Don Knotts was very popular at that time, was in all kinds of stuff. And, for scare factor, first half hour of this film has some of the best scares ever. So if you haven't watched this film, I recommend it. Jazz and I will be watching it at some point before Halloween, and it's a great little film. It's funny, it's scary, and it has great theme music by
Vic Mizzy.
our friend, yeah, Vic Mizzy, who also did the theme for the Addams Family.
And I mentioned it last episode. He did the theme for dun 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 dun.
Oh yeah, Green Acres.
Acres.
Anyway, I
Most, like I say, it's a perennial favorite of mine for Halloween. You know, the garden shears in the neck of the woman in the painting, the
yes,
blood on the keyboard of the organ, and they used Bonami. Just attaboy, Luther.
attaboy, Luther.
Great movie.
It is. It
One of
really
my
is.
favorite comedies.
Well, my friends, we've come to that part of the show where we share our sensor sweep. What have we purchased? What have we been gifted? What are we watching? What are we reading? What are we listening to? Planet 8's recommendations. Let's start off with Bob. You have an interesting little something to share with us.
As far as what I'm watching, I'm still making my way through Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. And I have been watching Agatha all along.
Yeah, it finally picked up this last episode, I thought.
Yeah. But, and I mentioned to the group before, I did go to Monsterpalooza, Son of Monsterpalooza last weekend. And a lot of fun. Drove down with my friend Kevin and Lisa. And Kevin had a table there, so I got a vendor badge. I could come and go as I like. And, you know, David Naughton was there from American Werewolf in London, along with his co-star, Griffin Dunn.
I'm assuming they did a American Werewolf panel at some point.
I think they did. I didn't go to any panels actually this time around.
Oh, okay.
And then Linda Blair, they always bring her in. She was like stuck way back in a corner somewhere. But I did go for a photo op. I kept saying I would never do that again after I did Shatner and Adam West and Burt Ward, but I gave in and I did a photo op with El Jefe, Bruce Campbell. And the bonus was Dana DiLorenzo and Pablo Santiago, the whole cast from Ash versus the Evil Dead. So it's like, how can I pass that up? Only $160. So anyways, I do have an item to present for the Sensor Sweep. And we did Godzilla Fest back in September. And a friend of mine, Richard Pusateri, was there. And he was selling off items from his collection. And he had this robot. Now, the story behind this robot, you see there's some Japanese writing there. That's from Nippon Gucci Corporation. And supposedly, I guess it was a some kind of advertising item. So it wasn't like a mass-produced toy. But I remember when Richard came up for the Thrillville showing of Mothra, he was in Japan. He came back from Japan. He landed in LA, got in his car, and drove up for Mothra, jet-lagged and all. But he did stop at Time Tunnel Toys, Joe Castro's store in San Jose, and bought this. And the reason he bought it, if you're watching on YouTube, or you can see on the stand, it says Gorath. Gorath was a movie from 1962 made by Toho, the company that makes the Godzilla films. And Akira Kubo, one of my favorite actors, was the star of the film. And there's a scene, just a really short scene, in a Christmas in the park type thing. And Kumi Mizuno and the other actress, who is Yumi Shirakawa, they're walking along in this little winter wonderland. And suddenly this robot comes up behind them and scares them. And the faceplate here pops open and it's Akira Kubo in the suit.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was only in that one brief scene, and here it is in figure form. So when we did our first Godzilla Fest, Richard Pusateri brought this to it and showed Akira Kubo, who was one of our guests. He goes, "Oh, this is the suit you were in." And Akira Kubo was like, "No, I'm an actor. I'm not a suit actor." And he goes, "No, but you were in here." "No, no, I'm an actor, not a suit actor." So he had to go do some Googling and found a picture of the robot with the faceplate open and Akira Kubo inside. And he admitted, "Oh, okay, I don't remember, but I guess I was in there." So the base of this is actually autographed by Akira Kubo. So
Nice.
since Richard was selling it, I told him I'd keep it in the family and buy it from him. So just because it had that kind of cool memory for me and all, I ended up purchasing it, and now it is mine.
Very nice. Walker, what's happening?
Well, I had hoped to have some sort of physical memento. I went to some Targets trying to get this new NECA Planet of the Apes Ultimate Gorilla Soldier, and of course, Phoenix. We don't have Jack, so I couldn't get it. So I have no physical.
Named Jack.
We don't have, we got a lot of dust and sand. We got nothing else. So I will simply say that I have been. What have I been doing? I've been watching. So I think I told you guys I got like a 3-month trial of Apple TV. And I don't know if you guys, I know you guys were watching the Legendary series.
Monarch.
Yeah. Have you watched For All Mankind?
No.
On Apple? Very, very good show.
But I still have Apples, so maybe.
You should check it out. It's an alternative history of the space program. Basically, well, it's not like a history show, it's a drama. But it starts in the 60s during the Apollo program, and basically the Russians beat the Americans to the moon. And so it takes off from there and how things change. But basically what happens is, because we're in this perennial space race, we wind up with a moon base, and then we wind up going to Mars, and all this other stuff happens. And so it's a really, really cool show. I binged the whole thing. I watched all 4 seasons. Really good show.
Wow.
Yeah.
And there are no accidents on the moon, though. It didn't blast it out of orbit or anything.
Not blasted out of orbit, but there's some things that happen on the moon that, let's just say, there's some dangerous activity on the moon. Yes. So now I got to go back and watch all the other Apple shows. Like, I when I was flying back from Rome, that's how I got to watch some Apple TV. They gave us like 3 episodes of what's the soccer one? Ted
Lasso.
Ted Lasso. We got 3 episodes of that. I had 3 episodes of what's the legendary Godzilla show? Monarch, yeah. 3 episodes of Masters of the Sky, whatever
You should watch The Servant by M. Night Shyamalan.
Well,
so
I got to fit it all in before December 18th, because that's when my free trial ends.
Well, I mean, you know what's coming up after that, though?
Mm.
The J.J. Abrams series. Adapting a cartoon called Speed Racer.
Well, I'm not too fond of J.J. Abrams anymore, so I don't know, Bob.
It's Speed.
I didn't grow up with Speed Racer. I'm sorry to say, so it's not as big a deal for me. But I watched that. Rewatching Fringe. Oh, Dark Winds.
Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah, now on Netflix. I watched both seasons of that. It's just 12 episodes, but it's a good show with the Navajo policeman set back in the 70s. Really interesting show. Yeah. That's all I got, gentlemen.
That's good. Good stuff. I finished the Rings of Power season 2. And I just, some of the things that they pronounce and the names, Lord Celebrimbor, love the way that these actors say that name. And it's not directed or produced by any of the folks associated with The Hobbit or the Lord of the Rings films. Peter Jackson, they use that that version of Lord of the Rings to tell this story of how the rings were created. And I like it. I hook, line, and sinker. And it was Karen Walker. You introduced me to the Hobbit cartoon. And then I had no desire to go see Fellowship of the Ring. And God bless you.
I showed you that rotoscoped Ralph Bakshi Fellowship of the Ring, and you were just like, oh my God, you did not like it at all.
It wasn't for me. But the films, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I remember the Fellowship with you, and I'm like, that's it? They're gonna end it here? And we had to wait for Two Towers, and then the Two Towers.
I watched the first episode of that Rings of Power recently, and I don't know. I have a hard time because I hear all this stuff and about how really they're just extrapolating. It's not really based on anything from Tolkien. They're just kind of making it up as they go. And I don't know. I guess maybe I'm too set in my ways about it should be from the books, damn it.
Yeah, I never read the books. And I was bored by the movies. So my chances of watching the series.
You don't strike me as a fantasy guy, Bob.
No, not really.
It's and I'll tell you, Walker, I agree with you on the first episode, because I watched the first episode and I didn't, maybe second episode, and I didn't watch it for a year, 10 months. And I was having a conversation with my nieces, Kayla and Jenny, and someday I'll have to explain to you why they call me Pumbaa. But they were like, Pumbaa, no, seriously, get past the third or fourth episode. And so,
That's
and I do have
About an investment.
well,
Get to anything good.
I've always had, right, the rule of three, because they're building relationships and they're explaining characters and their story arcs, and but the rule of three doesn't always work. I get it, Walker. That whole wolf with the mother robot that you love, you bought the 2 DVDs. I can't.
Yeah, we all have our things.
Yeah. So I get it. And I'm not going to mention Someone versus Someone that I love, but you and Bob are. And look, Planet 8.
I would watch any of the Lord of the Rings movies again.
Hey, Planet 8, we love what you're going to love. Support the fandom that you support. And if nobody else loves it, so what? You do. And that's what counts. So now Agatha all along. Some of you may love Agatha. It was a hard watch for me, but there was some payoff in this last episode, I thought, and a little bit of disappointment, because I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a character that they bring back from WandaVision that I wish they would have fleshed out more and made that character into someone who I believe we all want that person to be, but ultimately that didn't happen. We're just watching a lot of spooky films. At some point, Bob, if you're down, let's film maybe like 5 minutes worth of what our homes are decorated as, and we can do a little bonus YouTube video of Planet 8 decorating Halloween.
I think my house might be a little less this year.
Okay, all right. Well,
doing up the front porch, but my backyard haunt, the day after Halloween, I actually have a company coming out and putting in a solar battery for my solar panels.
gotcha.
And that's going to take up, they have to access certain walls, and that's going to take away like where the 12-foot skeleton goes. That is going to be accessed the day after, and where the 12-foot tree goes, that's going to be accessed. So it's like, I can't put those up, but maybe some animatronics. So I don't know, we'll see. Or I'll just keep
Whatever you have. And Waukee, I know you don't really put up too much
We
stuff.
get like 3 people. One year we got nobody. So
Uh,
I did buy a little projector this year with little ghosts. That's
there you
about
go.
Well,
it.
see,
Wow.
Hey,
we have the National Night Out block party every year. And my idea, since I am now living alone, Teddy doesn't help me with much. So living alone, I was just kind of gonna kind of downplay the Halloween decorating this year. But I talked to people there, and almost all of them, it's like, "Oh, where do you live?" "Oh, I'm up in the house on the corner." "Oh, the Halloween house." It's like, oh shit. I got this like,
You gotta uphold your
they
rep.
got me pegged now. I got to do something. So we'll
that's
see.
exactly what happened to us. We weren't here in the house. They were still building it. Last year we were in the rental and we had 2 or 3 things out and we probably had 5 kids come by. And it was sad, but we did our best. And this year we're back in the house and we have done it up. Um, Slowly but surely, weeks before Halloween, I put a little piece here, a little piece there. We put some lights out. The lights didn't work. You got to find the bulb. There's a ton of work that goes into this. And every day we have people stopping, taking pictures. I was messing with one of the animatronics one Saturday morning, and the kid next door comes out and says, "Thank you, mister." And it's like, yeah, you have this like, it sounds weird, but this responsibility now to, it's a corner house. And the neighbors are doing, as I look out the window of my office here, I see they have this like 12-foot Grim Reaper up. So this is it for me. I love Halloween. I've always loved Halloween.
I
So
have a house that's like a block down and up the corner. And he and I basically 2 houses that go all out. There are more houses this year with Halloween stuff out, I will admit, but not a lot. So it's up to him and I, and it's like, okay, I'm behind. I'm not pulling my weight. So
well, you do what you can do. I understand. And one night, Jazz and I drove around the neighborhood just to see what the competition looked like. And some of the houses just have some inflatables, but hey, they're doing the best they can. And some have like tombstones and Bigfoot skeleton, giant skeleton. And they ask us, which house are you? And we're the corner of so and so. And they're like, oh my God. And we're like, oh, thank you, thank you. We appreciate. So there's also a neighborhood um not watch, but they report like missing things, missing dogs and whatnot. But they also did a thing whose houses are decorated and are giving out candy. So that's the other thing. I've probably gotten about $100 worth of candy to hand out. And we'll see, because the first year we did it here, we ran out of candy. And I had to go to the store and all they had was Tootsie Rolls. So we don't want to disappoint.
Tootsie Rolls are good.
Yeah.
I think so too, but they didn't go over too well. And I was cleaning out the shed and I found some posters that I got from WonderCon, and it's Thor and Loki. So if you're dressed in a superhero costume, you're going to get a poster as well as candy. Couple houses down, they have a cotton candy machine. They're giving out cotton candy. So the neighborhood, we're in a good neighborhood. So,
Yeah,
Bob,
I go down to like the dollar store
yep.
and buy a bunch of like plastic vampire teeth and skull rings and spiders, whatever, throw them all in a big bucket, and then I put the Halloween candy in there. So they get to grab, stuff when they come to the door. And it's like, they don't just get candy, they get, trinkets, whatever. And it also keeps me from having to buy too much candy. So
That's cool. My father-in-law was like, "Oh, you got a lot of stuff. Are you putting it?" And as I started doing, he's like, "Oh, where's the vampire? Where's the spider? I think some spider webs look good." I'm like, "I thought you weren't like into the whole Halloween." Well, he is now. He actually shot video and put it on his Instagram, and he's like, "Yeah, people are commenting. It's the most comments I've gotten in a while." So it's kind of cool that he's into it too. He's like, before they wouldn't turn on the porch light. They wouldn't, he reminded me of Walter Matthau and Grumpy Old Men, where kids would come to the house of Walter Matthau for trick or treating. He'd he'd give him like some laundry detergent or a stapler because he had nothing to give the kids. But anyway, long story short, if Bob's up to it, we'll put some video up. Karen, you can take video or picture of your projector. That would be kind of cool. If
We'll see what I can.
I'll tell you what, kids, your mission commander will definitely, because I put a month worth of work into this. I'll put a video up. My sensor sweep share, I finally pulled the trigger on this Super Shogun Mechagodzilla, and this is the limited edition. Wow.
Space titanium version.
Thank you, Space Titanium.
I have the regular gray one, but
It's an investment, but this is what the yeah, and he's gonna look good with that Shogun Godzilla over there. And I got the King Kong that they came out with a couple years ago. But anyway, that is that. It's still available at super7.com. So if you so desire to invest, because it is an investment.
And I will give you one warning.
Yes, sir.
Just leave the stickers on the sticker sheets.
Okay.
They don't stick to him very well.
Okay. That's good to know.
I would have done that, but I didn't. So,
well, you
I've
know,
got like Mechagodzilla staying there with like a sticker just kind of flapping in the breeze.
I hate that. Let me get back to you, Bob, because I might scan these and have Jazz print out a sheet on vinyl or something. She has her little Cricut set up there, but I'll let you know.
All right.
Okay, kids, that's it. End of this episode. We want to wish you all a happy and safe Halloween. When next we meet, it'll be November 8th. So be safe. Take care. If you're on YouTube, like, share, comment on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're on all the interwebs, social media sites. And this is Planet 8 signing off.
Happy Halloween.
On that note, this will conclude this transmission from Planet 8. We would like to thank all of our intergalactic audience for listening. Be sure to head on over to our website at www.planet8podcast.com, where you can get more information on this episode's topic.
For more conversation, find us on Twitter at Planet8Cast.
Or on Facebook at facebook.com/Planet8Podcast.
We want to thank you guys for tuning in each and every episode. We look forward to your input and opinions. Until next time, this is Planet 8 signing off. End transmission.
By George, he's got it. It is the end.